Welcome to Lead the Way with Anna Gauker. Your guide, Anna Gauker, is on a quest of her own to find effective ways of creating change and inclusion in our communities. You have come to the right place if you believe in truth, justice, and coffee. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, this is Lead the Way. I'm Anna Gauker. In this episode, we learn from Laura Dresser, Assistant Director of COWS, a national think tank based in Madison, Wisconsin, that promotes solutions to social problems. A lot of Laura's work has focused on those in the low-wage workforce and how to elevate them and increase opportunity for upward mobility. Take your time and enjoy everything she has to say and see if you can find the moment where I fall in love with her, because I'm not sure when it was, but it definitely happened. So enjoy. Laura Dresser, thank you so much for being with us.
I'm really glad to be part of the discussion.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why I thought it would be really important to talk with you. As we start out, though, can you talk a little bit about your academic background and what led you on the path to where you are today?
Sure. There's all sorts of there's longer and shorter versions of this story, but I'll try and keep it interesting, so that'll be short. Um, uh, when I was in graduate school, in social work and economics, but what I really spent a lot of time doing was community organizing around homelessness issues. I was in Ann Arbor at the University of Michigan, and I did a lot of work on homelessness issues and Central America and anti-racism. And I feel like I sort of got one formal PhD from the University of Michigan and one really practical set of grounding from my time in Ann Arbor. And that those two things, by the end, I had, I knew how to run a regression or look at wage differentials or think about history. I actually did a lot of stuff about World War II and women and white and black women's wages, both in World War II in the 70s and 80s. But then I had all this other experience, and I was really looking for a job that it mattered both my values about how to move this country in a better direction, my skills about how to be part of that process and help organize that process, and the fact that I had this academic grounding in the structure of low-wage labor markets and racial disparities. I was looking for something that maybe would bring all that together instead of really going a very narrowly academic route. And so I found this, because a friend of a friend knew Joel Rogers at COWS, was looking for someone, and this was in 1995. I just finished my dissertation, or just finished my PhD, and had a couple conversations with Joel at that point, and came to Madison for this job, and have been in this job now almost 25 years. And it has been perfect for being at those intersections I wanted to be at, where it is all of the values I have and the skills I have and the practical organizing work I've done. I get to do all bits of that in my work.
It sounds like you really figured out your passion and your skill set early on. How did you come to figure that out so early?
That's such a good question because sometimes I feel like, um, I've been very open to what was coming at me. I think I, um, when I went to college, I thought I wanted to be an environmental engineer. And basically, I thought I wanted to be an environmental engineer because I was good at math and I liked camping, right? And really in a fundamental way, I really loved forest rangers, I think. Like that was the mess that was in my 18-year-old head. Um, and I got to, organic chemistry that wiped me out. I couldn't. And then I kind of discovered environmental engineering had a lot at that point to do with probably still water runoff control and sewage treatment. It wasn't really about camping. And, but I found then I moved into economics because it was actually easy. So your question is about like, finding my passion or whatever, but in a way I chose the econ major because I'd taken all this math and it was the shortest social science major, right? And then in doing that I took this class on poverty and interviewed a bunch of people on who were on AFDC in Texas. I was at school in Houston, Texas. And that was just completely eye-opening. And from there, applied to graduate school, but then landed at this graduate school where I found two communities, right? A community I knew I was going there for, this intellectual community, but this community of activism that I didn't plan on. And I think one thing that sort of marks my life is I've just been open to the opportunities that I see, and then I kind of fall into them and amazing things have happened. So I don't think I would have guessed before that this would line up in this direction or that my passion would be exactly down this road. But I have found, but I think staying open is part of it, to see what opens up and then to kind of take the opportunities from there, I feel is part of this story. But, also it's a lot of luck. I feel like I've been very lucky.
And also not being afraid to try something new or something you hadn't considered before.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, right, and part of that is what you learn maybe more in the organizing than in the academic community, right, is that the whole project is about hearing voices, hearing people and connecting with people. And if you're open that way, that's what helps you see new possibilities, because your own head isn't good at seeing what is possible. It's like hearing, it's connecting with other people that you see something different.
Right. The website, you mentioned cows, that's where you're working. The website describes cows as a think and do tank that focuses on high road solutions. So, what is a think and do tank?
So, hopefully, or perhaps you're familiar with the idea of a think tank, which is a strange, I don't know if that's supposed to be an allusion to a fish tank, or I think it's supposed to be a fish tank, not a military tank, but whatever.
I always assumed it was more of a military.
Yeah, interesting.
Reference,
yeah.
But I have no idea.
I assumed or perhaps hoped that it was like kind of a fish tank. But anyway, the think tank is a place where a bunch of people get together and, kind of ponder the world's problems, but in an applied way. I think think tanks are understood to be more applied than just an academic department. But what COWS has really tried to do, and what I've gotten to be a part of here and learned from the director, Joel Rogers, here, and from my colleagues, is to really engage in practice, not just write about the world or propose solutions for solving the world's problems, but to really, in a hands-on way, engage with whether it's labor unions or community organizations or technical colleges or workforce development boards, a whole range of actors working on for me, this is my working cows, low wage labor markets and training systems and solutions. So, we have ideas, we study other projects, we think about the national picture, but we also know the people we're working with and think about how implementation might work or what evaluation could help move the project along and things like that. So we're more, the do part is to imply that we get out of the tank, whatever that tank is, and sort of engage in trying to make the solutions real in the world.
Creating partnerships.
Yeah, a lot of our work has both been, sort of generated and created really deep relationships and ongoing projects.
A lot of your research focuses on workforce development. What is new and hot in workforce development?
There's almost no better way to make people go to sleep than utter the phrase workforce development. So new and hot there. I appreciate you asking. Well, so I would say there's like kind of a set of things that are the front edge of practice in workforce development that you can see all over the country. And then there's a couple places I wish the field was going. So in terms of what's going on in the field of workforce development, and that means roughly, this sort of system of I use it to mean everything short of 4-year college degrees, so kind of the 2-year degree system plus workforce development boards, small training programs, union-based training programs. I think the most exciting stuff is kind of reforming the relationship both with the student and with the place of employment, and thinking harder about how you make a connection that actually pays off in wages for the worker. That's where the most interesting stuff is. And I think in general, it sort of moves. Technical colleges have a lot of great tools for moving workers up, but so often the entire structure is based on a kind of full-time student model. And workers who earn low wages don't have the money or the time to go to school full time, and often they don't have the experience with school that suggests that's a good idea anyway. And so, technical colleges and community colleges thinking harder about how they reach working people and make meaningful training possible in shorter chunks, and kind of move with them that way, and integrate that more into their work meaningfully. That's sort of exciting stuff. That's what counts for exciting in workforce development. And then apprenticeship is a sort of fashionable federal and local thing. I think from my own perspective, thinking about labor standards and the mix of labor standards in workforce development issues has always been a central question. So, when we provide training or when we offer things in the labor market, what are the standards that we have around it? And so I'm very interested in the interaction or increasing minimum wages. The movement, the 5 for 15, is more exciting in some ways about what's happening in workforce development than any training module to me.
I went to community college back in the day. I got my associate's degree. How can we encourage more people to consider technical or community college and make that bridge available to people that might not be sure what they want to do down the road?
I think the associate's degree level is such in the state of Wisconsin has a lot more folks with associate's degrees than most states, and the payoff for the degree is better here than most states. It's the only category of worker where the median wage is higher than the national average is for the folks with associate degrees here, and we have more because the tech college system is pretty strong. Relative to other states. That said, though, as you point out, a lot of people are really totally focused on 4-year degrees and don't pay enough attention to that associate degree level training. And probably more relevantly, a lot of people, maybe they try school and it doesn't work for them, and so they feel like, I can't do that. And I think the things that make people feel like school is possible, and so sometimes that's shorter courses, sometimes that's more relevant courses, sometimes that's moving the training, moving the school to some place that's easier for them to see themselves. All of those things, all those approaches of getting the school away from the school a little bit so people can see their way into the school,
Right.
I think that matters.
Right. Because now it seems like private sector universities and online schools are becoming so much more attractive to people that have busy schedules and need to do the online thing while they're working, which can be a great option, but also leads to a lot more debt at the end.
Yeah, yeah.
No.
The private schools, the issues about non-completion and giant piles of debt that students are coming away with is a real concern, I think. And really, and those schools have figured out ways to focus on populations that, are Pell eligible. I saw a presentation about just the sheer volume of private training provider debt that the Black community has, because of the structure. So people not getting through the degree, getting a giant pile of debt, and the private training provider taking their Pell Grants and, kind of walking away free. I think that the whole financial structure there is really problematic. And this is one of the reasons that in Wisconsin, at least, we have this strong technical college system. And the public side at least has this kind of public good aspect to the work. So I think the more that the public providers of the 2-year degrees get into that space of the online and more accessible entry points, that also helps hold back the really bad actors, I hope, some, although regulation would help with that too.
Federal or state?
Federal, well, even Obama had a hard time regulating. There were some moves on the regulation of private education providers during the Obama years. That's mostly been rolled back by DeVos. So I suppose there are things you could do at the state level, but mostly it's a federal issue, I think, and mostly we're going the wrong direction. Surprise.
Well, that's encouraging.
Yeah, sorry.
Wisconsin has now recovered from the 2008 Great Recession. What are Wisconsin's greatest economic assets at this point?
Well, it's clear that so manufacturing is always an interesting story in the state of Wisconsin. We have a fraction of the amount of manufacturing we used to have, but we are the second or first highest share of the workforce in manufacturing, right? So we still have a strong manufacturing base. And manufacturing is interesting to people because all that value gets exported, right? It's like cheese. So the two things where we make it here and then we sell it all over the world, anytime you make it here and sell it all over the world, that makes money for the state. So manufacturing and cheese, dairy, matter as assets that generate real wealth in this state. I think also as climate change continues to come at us, these assets of water and the more temperate climate and drought resistance are actually going to become more and more relevant. So that's a kind of long run, horrifyingly needed asset that, that actually positions Wisconsin better than some places. But, the sort of more narrowly, I would say or for right now, the people of this state is, of course, the greatest human asset we have, the greatest asset we have in terms of the economy, and thinking about how we develop and build that asset feels like the most relevant policy lever to me. It's sort of what are we doing about people in this state, and how can we take this very, we work a lot, we more than most states. Our both male and female labor force participation is higher than most states. Our wages are sort of middling, but and our educational outcomes are sort of middling. So there's things to move, but there's there's a lot of great people in the state, and that's where the asset is.
Do you have recommendations on how we can be connecting jobs more broadly to people who might not already be in the workforce?
Yeah, I think there's specific ways to make the employment connection work better. And in this state, we need to think about the inequality of that connection in the past in order to begin to close some of the gaps that are really kind of tearing at the social and political fabric of the state. I think the racial inequality of the state, maybe your listeners know, is among the worst in the nation, often the worst in the nation, whether you're measuring incarceration, income, education. Racial disparity is really extreme here. And that racial disparity means that the Black community has less access to economic opportunity across the board, and finding ways to build that bridge through training, through work against racism and discrimination, through new innovative partnerships between community organizations and employers. All of that matters through community leverage and demand as well. Community organizing, whether it's sort of targeting a specific employer or sort of moving more broadly. I think all that would matter a lot. And I think there are probably lots of populations in the state for whom both that kind of front-loaded advocacy, demanding access to jobs, in addition to the innovations on training and connections, sort of both carrots and sticks in terms of changing who gets which jobs, really would matter in this state.
Are the reasons why we should be hopeful that the racial disparities may be moving in a better direction?
Well, we should probably always be hopeful, because when we stop being hopeful, we quit working on stuff. And in fact, it is good news that we're finally, as you mentioned, finally basically out of the 2008 recession. It took too long. And even so, the Black unemployment rate is still twice as high or more as the white unemployment rate. So it's not that the problems are gone, and they won't be, but at this moment, employers are as open as they ever will be, right? Because the unemployment rate is below 3%, and employers are interested in figuring out solutions to problems. So that's one point of, I think, that can help close the gap some. And hopefully this period of low unemployment lasts for a long time. And I think the other thing is that our focus on this and the organizing of communities around it has also been increased over the last 5 or 10 years. So in the city of Madison, you have Race to Equity, you have Justified Anger, you have coalitions mobilizing around equity and access, and that pressure also matters. And so I'm hopeful for those two reasons, though the arc has been very slow to move on this one, and the state I think, is resistant, and some of the politics in the state still pull very heavily in the other direction. I think the divide between the Republicans and the Democrats does not help with this gap.
I guess that was my other question is, do you think that pressure of progressive movements in Madison translates to people throughout the state, or maybe in more rural areas?
I think that the questions of racial equity that are going on in the city of Madison, the kind of work around that that's mostly local on access and opportunity and investment, um, is another place where people from other, maybe from more rural, less diverse places, just look at Madison and think, oh, see,
Right.
that's, the 72 miles surrounded by reality, or however we're supposed to say it. That's not me, and that's not my problem, and that's not my experience. That doesn't mean that is no reason not to grapple with it here. This city requires that kind of attention. I think, but across the board, there are issues that we are grappling with here in Madison and all across this state that do resonate, about the quality of jobs, the access to decent health insurance, the access to decent services for people. All of that really matters, and I think that's shared. Um, I I don't know, how you get the conversation across the state. I believe it can happen, but I've worked mostly in cities. I worked mostly on issues that are kind of more related to cities, and so my answers aren't as good, sort of further away.
What should I be reading right now?
What should you? Oh, well, I would say always read Rebecca Solnit. Do you know Rebecca Solnit?
No, can you spell
I
that?
will tell you a little bit about Rebecca Solnit. She's kind of an anarchist, not in the sense of wearing, the black bloc. But she's studied. She's very interested in, moments when the crisis is so deep that the capacity of the state, to respond is removed. So the fire in San Francisco at the turn of the last century, or Hurricane Katrina, and in these moments, communities, people mobilize and solve problems quite instantly. That's what she means by anarchism, or the instances of anarchism. She calls it, she says, we're all looking for, ways to demonstrate public love, and we don't ever have opportunities to. Anyway, she writes brilliant, essays. She's kind of a poet. To me, she's kind of a poet. She has a book called Hope in the Dark that she released in 2004 and then re-released in 2016, about the requirement for hope, which is, lovely. She has a book about walking called Wandering, I believe, and she has, a recent essay on, the way our impulse is to try and find heroes to solve problems for us, instead of realizing that it's only when we all work together that we are going to solve the problems at the scale that we have. So I would read Rebecca Solnit. Oh, she also has a book, Men Explain Things to Me, which is a pretty funny book.
Okay, I will look that up. Do you know how to spell that?
Yeah, it's, Rebecca the usual way, Rebcca, and then Solnit, Solnit. And she's got a nice website where she's put all her stuff together, and there's a New York Times book review, interview of her where she says what she's reading, which is the list I'm starting to read now.
Perfect. What is the one message that you want to convey to the masses through your work?
That, I think that, we have to believe that something better is possible, and that believing in that and figuring out that together is part of the project of making that possible. And, so that every time we all are trying to productively connect on solving problems, that is a space we all need to be in all the time, and that space is local and national and international, and it's about climate change and racial inequality and justice for people at every level, but that the steps toward it are connection and a real sense of possibility. So hopefully people get that, but mostly they get tired when they hear the word workforce development.
Well, thank you so much. I could probably talk to you all day, and you're possibly my new favorite person. So
That's very kind.
thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks once again to Laura Dresser for everything that she shared with us in this episode. I think that she has a wonderful perspective, and I just loved hearing what she had to say about all of us being part of the solution to these big problems that our communities are facing today. This episode is brought to you by the time and talent of Buzz Kumper, Tyler Willenbrink, and I'm Anna Gauker. Until next time.